Call the meeting to order. It's Tuesday, March 9th, 2021. This is the Superintendent's Workshop. So welcome. And the meeting is called to order, I guess, at 1:01. And I would like to turn them over to our distinguished superintendent, Dr. David Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we will dive right into it. And we do have a packed agenda of a number of updates being provided to the board today. And we're starting with our presentation, our release of our summer school programming, and what can happen when a community comes together, defines a need, and works collaboratively for the benefit of students. You can triple the amount of offerings being provided to students in this county as it relates to summer programming. So Mr. Meyer, along with Ms. Emerson, will be providing a presentation today, and we have the benefit and joy of having a number of our supporters, our partners, our funders, who are really going to work not with us, but work with children over the summer to bring a very, very important and strategic approach to our summer. Summer has always had that summer slide. We all know about the impact of summer school or not being away from live instruction for so long. You add COVID into that mix and it becomes this much greater problem. So being the forward thinkers that we are, we have filled this room with our partners, our supporters, to highlight and celebrate what we are doing for our summer program. And I will turn it over to Mr. Meyer. I feel like some music should be playing. Summertime? Summertime? No, okay. Mr. Meyer.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Through the chair, very excited today to present Illuminate 2021. As you see, a great community support. A lot of calls have gone on in the past year, a lot of Zoom meetings, but to see everyone's face live and in person, to see the great people that come together to support the students of Indian River County, it brings my heart a lot of joy. When we began this process, we knew we needed a comprehensive approach to the summer conundrum, as you will, right, to address the summer slide. And I think the presentation that you'll see here today is something that we'll all be very proud of, that we have left no stone unturned. We began with three really key points that we wanted to make sure that we accomplished, which was expanding summer programming, maximizing our community partnerships, and improving our academic acceleration. As Dr. Moore already alluded to, right now, we can already sort of attest. I mean, we don't know until the students actually sign up to come, but we are certainly planning and we are prepared, and we will offer over 3 times the number of student opportunities than what we've had in the past. So that first bullet right there in and of itself is going to be something very special we can hang our hats on. But like I said, I keep going back to the people that are sitting behind me and to the side of me. It's just really exciting, the number of people in this community that support education and that recognize the need to support our students throughout the summer. And of course, none of this is just for play, right? We'll go through each and every one of these programs and talk about, its task, its purpose, and all of them have been aligned to ensure that our students get the academic outcomes that they need. So without further ado, I would like to recognize some of our partners. So if you would stand and be recognized as we go through. From the Crossover Mission, Ms. Kim Hanley. Thank you so much for being here. From the Learning Alliance, we have Ms. Devi Arsenault and Ms. Liz Ball. From Orca, Ms. Melissa McIntyre. From the Young Journalists of Indian River County, Mr. Thomas Hardy. From United Way, Mr. Nate Bruckner. Thank you. Skipping down to RBI, the Fun at Bat, Mr. Kim Willis. Love that. From the Indian River Ed Foundation, Mr. Doug Herron. From Johns Island Community Service League, Ms. Lynn Whipple. So much. From the Substance Awareness Council, Ms. Christina DeFalco, Suzanne, did I say Ann Catherine? Sorry, Ms. Emerson, sorry, if I can't read it. And our Executive Director, Carrie Lester. Thank you. And then our own internal extended day program, we're going to recognize you guys, Ms. Barbara Musselwhite, some other folks that are doing some of the programs. I'll hit on those internal teams here in a second, but did want to give a shout out to the Vera Beach Ballet, the Vera Beach Museum of Art, the Jaffe Family Foundation, and the Quail Valley Foundation. So great partners as well. Give them a round of applause. I can tell you, coming from the state, getting to travel all 67 counties, living in what I consider to be a great place in North Florida, there's no one around the state that isn't jealous of this. So kudos to all of you and what you do. I think that, you know, the light that you're shining, the light that you're illuminating on all of us in this county is something that really is going to make us be the literacy capital of America, because it's special. It's just special. So without further ado, looking at our programs and watching how this is going to progress, we know that we have to begin with our earliest learners. So we have a lot of great programs in this county as far as the Step into K, the VPK, both programs that are established. I'm going to go through those. Our Level Up Literacy program this year, I'm going to hit on that. You know, this is a place where we have tripled the support. Extended school year, that is our internal team that provides this year a lot of support to STEM for families who don't necessarily qualify for one of the other programs. The math and crossover mission, very excited to bring that to our secondary programs. We've done presentations about the impact that COVID has had on the middle grades and intermediate math, and so this is a program that is really going to beef that up and support those students along with the math and tech venture. And then, of course, graduation, right? So a lot of these programs that we're taking students from pre-K into the early years of kindergarten through their middle years, but we can't forget that many of our students are right there at the cusp of graduation, that they're right there needing to make up a couple of courses, and so we will continue those supports as well. So early learning, you know, in early learning, the Step into K program, 230 kids, and so once again, very excited to bring this program along with our voluntary pre-K program with 65 other students, spread between the 3 locations, out in Fellsmere, a North County site for Pelican Island, and Vero Beach Elementary. These programs will run through June and July, and very much looking forward to the academic services that will be provided within those programs. We had a great presentation a couple weeks ago about our early learning programs and kindergarten readiness. We intend to utilize a lot of the strategies that we spoke about within that presentation in these 2 programs to really target the right kids, ensure that the quality of instruction is there to provide them the explicit instruction that they need to make sure that they are beginning kindergarten ready. So that represents, if you total that up, you know, close to 300 kids, that's about 25% of our incoming class. So that's pretty significant to offer that summer program for that larger percentage of our students. The Level Up Literacy program, you know, as many of us are familiar with, and myself particular, about summer reading camp in 3rd grade, right, for the students that have not met the criteria for promotion. I always found it to be disappointing, I think, when I traveled the state and you would see the program that was offered to 3rd grade students, and it was only the 3rd grade students that weren't promotable, right? These are the students that we serve in our schools because we're just trying to get them to 4th grade. The proactive approach that the district has taken this year, along with our community partners, is to offer that same level of service to our rising 2nd graders, our rising 3rd graders, and of course the 3rd graders who are still at risk of retention. So, you know, 442 students, that triples the number of students that are supported through that. That program will run for 4 weeks in June, and we anticipate that it will have a significant impact on the readiness of those students for their next grade level, right? So the students that are moving from 1st to 2nd grade, that gives them an extra opportunity to catch up on some of the learning that they may not have been as successful with this year, or, you know, maybe they were in school the entire time, but they still need that additional 4 weeks. This is certainly the right space and place to be doing that before they get to 3rd grade and before they are at risk of retention. Same thing with that group of students that's in 2nd grade, moving from 2nd to 3rd. I truly believe that that's going to enable those 3rd grade teachers to receive a better prepared cohort, so it is not as much of a lift within that 3rd grade year. And then our 3rd grade students, I mean, the challenge that I think that we're going to face right now within this year is that the state has opened up the testing window. That's a great thing, right? That they've opened up the testing window and given us more time, but they've also notified us that we may not receive the scores at a time that we could say, oh, your student didn't, you know, meet the criteria. So what we're doing to be proactive, we have internal progress monitoring metrics. We know the students that are at risk. The teachers know the students who need more support. So whether or not they would necessarily be at risk of retention or not, we're going to identify those students that need that additional support so that they are ready for 4th grade, right? It's not just about not getting a level 1. It's not just about meeting those criteria. It's about each and every year being prepared to begin the standards of the subsequent year at a level of success. So our Level Up Literacy program. Very, very, very proud that has grown. Community partners, we are in talks with many community partners to help support these early literacy programs. So thank you to those of you who are supporting that. Now, this is our extended school year, and we did have some talks around this. Thank you, Ms. Rosario, for pushing us around the name. We're going to come up with a different marketing and branding on this. I think Ms. Musselwhite has come up with a good one, STARS. And where you at? Where's that stand for? STARS was, I haven't got it right yet. I haven't said it enough times. I've got to practice.
Science, technology, academic, recreational, and then some.
And you're not Ms. Musselwhite, but thank you, Ms. Emerson, for assisting with that. My thought partner in crime. And you know, this is for our students, once again, and that's the challenge, I think. Or I'm misspeaking, right? So this just, I'm getting ahead of myself. I think Dr. Moore may need to borrow your glasses, right? That I'm talking about the extended school year because there is a little bit of a challenge there with our program, and I just really alluded to the challenge that exists there. ESY is our students with disabilities who, within their IEPs, are guaranteed by federal programs to get additional services. And so with this elementary exceptional ed program, we will be at these same 3 sites, so the students are at locations with their peers, our 6 to 12 program at Storm Grove Middle School. And once again, that's serving students, over 400 students will be able to participate within that program. And I'm going to jump around because I want to show you the challenge here. This is the issue at hand that Ms. Rosario sort of spoke to us about. Our extended day program, as close as it is back to the extended school year, is why we need to make that change with Ms. Rosario, because even the assistant superintendent will get confused at time when we see those names used in the same place. So thank you for that. Because I am the example. So our math movement paired with the crossover mission and tech venture, as I stated, this partnership with the crossover mission, you know, middle school kids, I was a middle school principal. It is always a challenge to get some of our adolescent kids to get excited about summer learning, right? So you do need to pair it with something that they are engaged with. And I don't know who doesn't like basketball. I love basketball. You know, I mean, I think that's a great thing that we're doing. So thank you so much for sponsoring this. I think that was a very creative idea that you guys came up with. I look forward to seeing it within our schools, and then our own district IT department has also done something throughout the course of the year. So by combining those 2 programs for the students that are in the grade levels that we know we need to support to ensure they are algebra ready, very excited that this is going to be something within our new way of work. The specialty programs, the Moonshot Academy, Literacy on the Lagoon, you know, those are things that have been around in this district for a number of years. We missed them last year, right? I mean, looking at what's going on within the community, we are returning to a closer semblance of new normal, right? But these were programs that, you know, were vital to the success of many of our 3rd graders. Very excited that we're going to be able to continue to do those this year in person. Our 21st Century, of course, those are programs that, you know, are sponsored at certain schools through federal grants. Those are coming back, summer school in person. The extended day that I already misspoke about, that I'll correct. And then each of our individual Title I schools have the opportunity to do some things together as well. So our new STARS program, right? And look at this, featuring weekly Mad Scientist shows, life skills, our Fun at Bat, RBI, the Young Journalist Club, the Environmental Learning Center, ORCA, Legends of Learning, the Skate Factory. You know, if people think that this is just, you know, I'm going to drop my kids off, they're just going to play in the sprinklers. That's what I did back in the 80s, right, when I was a kid at elementary school day camp at my school. I look at the number of opportunities that our kids have here, and it's just tremendous. I mean, the depth and breadth of the different experiences that they will get to have to stop that summer slide. Just like I said, and moving my family here and speaking with my wife about the opportunities that abound for our youngest learners, so proud to live in Indian River County, so proud of the people that have partnered with us to bring this to our newly rebranded STARS program, also known as our former Extended Day. Literacy on the Lagoon, I apologize, the Environmental Learning Center, I still have not made it out there yet. I keep saying I'm going to make it, and I haven't made it out there yet. But, you know, everyone loves that. I mean, everyone loves the location. I know that our students, it is such an opportunity for them that having the Literacy on the Lagoon program, which is aligned to the standards, which is aligned to the science of reading, which does give them that background knowledge. I'm going to give a presentation here and just a little bit on our adoption of ELA curriculum. But one of the most important things and indicators of a student's success in literacy is their background knowledge. So getting that firsthand approach to get to visit at such a special place like the ELC, there's no doubt in my mind that that's going to improve our students' ability to tackle certain vocabulary that they will face when they're informational texts moving forward. Moonshot Academy, as I said, hallmark program, I think, it's been in place for a number of years. Great success has been seen from this. We'll be at Rosewood, Magnet, and Citrus Elementary School this year. Almost 200 kids will be served by that. Very established, very successful. Thank you so much, Learning Alliance, for continuing to offer this program. And then our 21st century programs that are at Treasure Coast and Sebastian will also have the opportunity to serve upwards of 120 students as well. Obviously, these programs have a strong academic component, being there at the school, and the way in which that grant is written from the state, that they have been tremendously successful through the past, and I know that both principals are excited that those will be supporting their students this summer as well. So that in a nutshell, as fast as I can make it, because I know I've got to share this presentation with everybody else at the workshop, but I think you can see, going back to those 3 bullets, the expansion of opportunities, the maximization of the community partnerships, the realignment of the academic outcomes. The summer's bright. We're going to illuminate things. And once again, thank you to everyone who's coming. I'd be happy to field any questions from the board at this time.
Let me, go ahead.
Okay, I will. First of all, thank you for everybody for being here and for partnering with the school district. We really appreciate that. And we need to do more of that, as we've been discussing, because there's a lot of really good centers out there, especially in STEM, I know. Couple things. What is RBI? That's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah, so I, to be honest, may not give the most comprehensive answer. I don't know, Ms. Emerson, if you'd like to pass the mic, or we could even let the individuals, if you have questions for them, they're here, so we can have them talk more about that.
I've heard of everybody else.
you.
I've just never heard of RBI.
I was lucky enough to hear a presentation by Mr. Willis last year, and I would love for him to share.
Microphone. Okay.
You take my mic? Yeah, there you go.
Sorry about that.
No problem at all. My name is Ken Willis. I'm a PE teacher at Vero Beach High School. RBI is reviving baseball in inner cities through Major League Baseball. And we have a program that is an after-school program, and we have a program working with youth. So we have a 2- and 3-year-old program, baby ballers, working with 2- and 3-year-olds, and it's just giving back to the community.
Yep.
So we're very excited to partner with the school district to give back to the youth.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Candy. Okay.
Ms. Emerson is going to take the mic for a second. Run.
Just right now, it's running through our Extended Day program and our Summer Stars program with Extended Day.
Okay, great. First of all, I see about, 1,800 students altogether. I did the math. And are they 1,800 different students, or will some students be in several of these programs? How's that going to work?
Each one of these programs is targeting a separate student. So that's, although some of them may qualify for multiple programs, I think that given the fact that they mostly run all consecutively, there will not really be an opportunity for them to participate in more than one of the programs.
Okay, great. So that's a wide variety of kids, and we're going to get to be able to help. Third grade students, you mentioned that third grade students that need more support will be identified.
Yes.
Having been an elementary principal, you are aware of those students. However, there are students that surprise you, and they are good readers, and they go to take the test, and they have test phobia. What are we doing about that?
Absolutely. So thank you for that question. The state statutes that govern good cause exemption will continue to be in effect, right? So
Okay.
there are multiple means for students to earn an exemption to the quote-unquote mandatory retention. They portfolio of student work, the alternative assessments like scores on iReady. And so even if there's an issue in the summer, you have what's called a mid-year promotion, so we can still promote them at the beginning of the year if we can give them more support through the rest of the summer to get them there. So it won't just be a one test and you're done. You don't have another opportunity. Through the compilation of those student portfolios and alternative assessments, our hope is that one performance will not hold them back.
Okay, and then the last thing I have is the STARS program, Extended Day Summer Camp. No, I'm sorry, is it the Literacy on the Lagoon? Was only for Treasure Coast and PIE, is that correct?
That's correct.
Why is that?
It's location specific, so, we in the past have tried to, I think, encourage different schools to participate, and we found that the literacy leadership at Pelican Island was able to make that a reality. And Ms. Mori's leadership, she said she was all in again, so we are targeting that school for the support of that program.
Are we still doing fourth grade Lagoon Days then?
Say again?
Are we still doing fourth grade Lagoon Days?
The field trips, the
Right.
field trips were on hold this year still,
They're on hold?
yes.
Okay, so we have a bunch of kids that haven't gotten to do that for the last 2 years then. Just saying.
We are
It's a
very,
rite of passage in this district, you don't know that, but it has been for years and years and years for kids to go out there and be educated about the lagoon, which is a very important part of our county. And I think that's important that we remember that.
absolutely. So, we looked at different options of what we could do to support that program this year. We still have the funds that are unexpended, so as we bring a proposal next year, we can certainly look at, to your point, the rite of passage in which students have and haven't had that opportunity regardless of the year in which they're in, and make sure we're providing opportunities.
Okay.
It's just
I'm gonna hold
reality
you
of the
to that.
situation.
Thank you.
Fair enough. I think they should get to go too. We just haven't been able to make it happen with COVID in the past 12 months.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Thank you. This is wonderful. I'm so excited. I reached over, called Kristen to take some pictures because what we see that the public doesn't see are the beautiful faces that are behind the panel here, the leadership panel. Beyond. Every seat, socially distanced, is filled up, and we have space on the side, and it's a really beautiful sight to see the collaboration and the importance that is put on children here in this community, not just with the school district, but with our extended partners. And I would even venture to say that you're not extended, that you are part of the family here as well. I have a couple of questions here, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what you mentioned with regard to the rebranding, just to kind of clarify the conversation that we had. When we met last week, the question that I posed was, and I needed a little clarification because our extended day is what most people know as an after-school program. During the regular school day, after school is finished, then kids attend an extended program, which is known as an after-school program. And then we had combined here the presentation that extended day program and summer camp was together. And so I was totally confused as why do we have extended day titled in with our summer camp. And so that's really where the conversation went when Mr. Myers is talking about rebranding. That's really the purpose. So my request was to, if we're going to do summer camp, let it just be summer camp and not put the extended in there. So thank you for that, and
Well,
I
thank you,
appreciate
because
it.
I messed it up, so I proved your point, exactly.
The stars, though, I missed the last S. So it was science, technology, academics, and recreation. What was the last S? Summer programming. Thank you. Are we going to allow for a little wiggle room? I mean, we have, with the number here of expected attendees, are we going to allow for a little wiggle room for those students who may be new, moving into our county, students who may not have been identified beforehand, who might qualify or might be interested in the summer camps, to allow them to participate and go above and beyond the numbers that we're expected?
I think that flexibility is always what you would want to see. First and foremost, we're going to begin the process next week of hiring the administrators and then teachers that would fulfill these, and so then we'll have a better idea of what our true capacity would be once we start to, get those that are, volunteering, and then maybe we have to do some marketing to get some more folks to make sure we have enough teachers. But then we would reach out to the parents themselves and get a commitment. And then from there, our intent is absolutely to fill this many seats. And so your question about flexibility, if we have the teachers identified, if we have the partnerships identified, then we would fill each and every seat, regardless of the initial criteria that were set. We feel like this criteria is certainly going to make a big improvement in the instructional outcomes. But, should some of the families, notify us that they're traveling or they may not attend, we're not going to let seats go unfilled. We will continue to fill them. And so also many of the community organizations that we've been in contact with, we're still shoring up, some specifics around some funding. So there may be more support coming. There may be more financial support from the state. That's another critical component of this as well, is to make sure that, if there is special state funding that just shows up on our doorstep in the next few weeks, which it may, that we, communicate with our community partners and make sure that we're using the state's funds first, and then we'll pivot on the support and partnership with the community organizations on how better to reallocate those funds. But absolutely, I mean, none of this is meant to be set in stone. It is meant to, be the best plan that we have at the time, and we will continue to improve that plan each and every time we have an opportunity.
I think that's wonderful for us to be able to do. Mr. Fagan, if there is anything left in a wish pot somewhere to help supplement, it would be fantastic. I think in a year coming out of COVID, it would be really prudent of us to ensure as much resources as we can to not only support our academic programs, but our partnerships who are working with us to that end. I don't know if maybe our county commissioners might be able to have a little bit of, extra funding there as well to help support, but that would be, maybe we can make a call in for our summer needs, I suppose. And I want to also mention the fact that this summer school / summer camp because those are really two different programs that we are offering, right? Summer camp and then summer school, right? No?
I would just like to blanket it all under the Illuminate 2020, which has multiple opportunities for most all students. I don't know that I can honestly say that every student there's a plan, because there's not something for the secondary students that don't
High
meet
school.
certain criteria.
Right.
But we certainly tried to come up with something where we were supportive in some fashion for nearly every student. And to your question about capacity, I think when we get to that next step of getting the confirmation from the parents, if we were to find that we're getting more requests than we have initial seats, that's when we have to react.
Good.
It will be intriguing to see the level of parental desire for this in a year like COVID. I mean, are they really looking for more school? I mean, we're talking you were up to 2,000, but that didn't even really encompass the number of students in secondary that may be participating in credit recovery. So, there's a chance that it really could be over 3,000 students that will be doing something that we've planned for. So.
Well, there's a fee schedule here, and the fee schedule,
For the
based on
stars.
what I understand when we talked, is that the fee schedule is for summer camp. So the camp program, there is going to be a fee that parents would pay if they want their child in the summer camp, just like we would in an outside, jujitsu camp or some other camp. But then the summer program, there is no fee for the summer program. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that's why I said that there were two different programs in my head. That's how I can kind of, underneath the
That's fair.
umbrella of Illuminate Summer 2021. But I think that with the branding and the capacity that we have now and the push to offer these two the way that we're offering it, we're going to stand out different than we've ever done before. And so the hope is that parents will indeed want their children who have not had a traditional school year ending last and then into this year the way that it has been in the past, obviously. They might want to jump on the opportunity of putting their child in school district of Indian River County's summer program and or the academic programs. So I'm excited about it. I thank you for all of your work in this. I'd like to also ask Dr. Moore to consider ways that we can, the country is opening up. many states are moving towards no masks at all. And not to bring up the mask issue here, but when it is a well-known, even the CDC recognizes that when you are outdoors, there is less risk than being in a closed facility. I'm sure if we reach out to the ELC, we'll be able to kind of maybe brainstorm some ways that maybe we can honor the fourth grade rite of passage trip to the ELC this year somehow, and maybe we can make that happen. I'd like to challenge you and your team to reach out and see if we can do that. Things are changing, and they are also making arrangements to, and I know that I've spoken with the director there, the executive director, on multiple occasions, and she has said, we're willing to do whatever it takes. So whenever that opportunity comes.
We,
We are making aggressive steps back to normal. I think the last month has been very,
I don't know if I can hear you.
as a, I feel like I was being heard. I think the last month has been very, very effective for us to moving back towards the sense. We're taking some very early preliminary foundational steps. Still a lot of work in progress to do, but we're definitely moving in the right direction. So we'll
Excellent.
explore that. And if there's opportunities to get that done, that is one less grade level that we'd have to make up for in the upcoming years.
and
Thank
I owe Miss Amy Shea an apology. I think I skipped her in the introduction, so can you stand and be recognized? Thank you. I apologize.
Yeah, there she is.
And yeah, we have been in contact about to the field trips and trying to work through this, and we will not give up on that.
Thank you all.
Dr. Jones.
Good afternoon. And before I begin, Mr. Willis, I want to thank you for what you're doing. I've seen your program in action and what you're doing, especially for those 2- and 3-year-olds, just absolutely wonderful. Thank you. And to everyone sitting here today. I got to be a part of the Step Into Kindergarten a few years ago under Ms. Mallett's and Ed Foundation, and what you're doing to prepare our students is crucial, just like Moonshot Academy and everyone else here. You know, reading by 3rd grade is such an essential goal of all of ours, because it does determine graduation rate. Mr. Meyer, when we look at the Level Up Literacy Camp, and we're opening it 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, which is wonderful, I know this is a prediction, but when we're looking at 3rd grade and what needs to be done, especially with COVID, what are we looking to do to help those students, not only with Summer Slide, but everything else?
So, you know, I think the science of reading is clear of what the students should be working through. The challenge that most districts and most schools have is ensuring they have the resources to do that. So very, very grateful, once again, support from the Learning Alliance, the number of intervention teachers that we have, the coaches that we have, improving that instruction. I think the challenge there is just making sure we don't miss anyone. The early data that's coming out, quite honestly, about the impacts of COVID is that early literacy was not as impacted as other areas. Now, clearly, we aren't where we want to be in a normal year. We have the moonshot moment that we want to achieve as 90% literacy proficient. So there are a lot of things that the district is putting in place as far as kindergarten readiness, the early interventions. I'm very excited about the ELA adoption that I'll speak about here in a little bit, but it is just making sure those students that haven't had the opportunity to have the time that they needed, and quite honestly, that's a lot of what it is. It's that you may have heard of the 3 million word barrier that certain students have exposure to before they enter kindergarten. It's giving them more time to be supported by a teacher that knows what they're doing, to explicitly, you know, cover the material that their explicit gap is showing that they need help in, whether it be decoding or phonemic awareness, so on and so forth. So our team has really honed in on the individual needs of those students. That's why I'm very grateful for the continued support and how this program will not be disjointed from what we were already doing. That's the exciting thing about having our teachers, having it be in the schools, so that we know what the students will need to work on, and it will continue their progress towards that end.
Thank you. Mr. Fagan, Dr. Moore, I see that a lot of time we do provide transportation, which is essential. Are we okay with our budget? Because we're always underfunded with transportation.
Through the chair, look, make sure I say it right, wrong. Yeah, you're right. Across the entire state, money provided from the state. There's probably around 40 to 50% gaps that the district has to use their own funds to offset transportation. But in terms of us providing services, budgeted for, and we're ready to go.
Okay, good to go. Okay. I'm really looking forward to the mathletes with Tech Ventures. As a former middle school principal, you do have to grab them other than, oh, we're going to math summer school. We're going to involve the basketball, so I'm really looking forward to how that's going to happen, and I will visit there. In our middle and high school course recovery, I know all of you know Edgenuity is not easy. Are we going to be assigning teachers to those students? Because even when I volunteered at Gifford Middle and we had that, it's challenging. So they will be connected with the teacher, not just to monitor, but to really assist.
Exactly, and what some of these high schools are doing is creating spaces and places for the students to actually come into the campus. As I said, with graduation, really need to make sure those seniors finish up those credits and they graduate on time. Another critical year, of course, is 8th grade, as you know, but I'll say it for everyone. I mean, that you can be promoted to 7th grade and to 8th grade being, half a credit behind, so on and so forth. But that jump from 8th grade to 9th grade, they have to have all of their middle school courses completed. So really it's focusing in on those 8th graders to make sure that they don't spend a 4th year in middle school, and our high school seniors to make sure that they graduate on time. But of course, credit recovery does require a certified teacher to be assigned to the students to ensure they're making adequate progress.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who assists us in this community. It's wonderful.
Okay. Comments, Dr. Schiff?
I have nothing to add that hasn't already been said. Thank you.
Well, I would like to, I'm impressed that my colleagues have such knowledge of the inner workings of all of this. It was so long ago when my kids went through summer programs, I can't even remember, but that might be a function of age. So you're still on.
Thank you, sir. Well, once again, big thanks to everyone that came out to support us and is continuing to support us. It is special to see everyone in one place. We do get those pictures, Ms. Maddox, because I want to highlight that partnership from everyone. So thank you again. And thank you to Ms. Emerson and Ms. Becerra for helping me get this together. Yes.
Sorry, I have one more question that
Sure.
Sorry, if I was missed there. Because we have so many students that are not going to participate in the summer enrichment program or the summer camps, or maybe even attend some of these outside organizations independently, have we given any consideration to opening up some positions in our virtual school for virtual academies or virtual clubs, virtual enrichment, anything that we can offer in terms of maybe an alternative camp for students who might want to travel but still need that extra enrichment?
So I think in some cases, my job is to solve problems. In other areas, it's to create problems. And what we're doing with Illuminate is we're pushing it out. This is early March. We will put Ms. Maddox and her team to work in branding and marketing and advertising the whole initiative. Illuminate, if you're endorsed or a part of Illuminate, it is a school district of Indian River County program in which solid instruction is going to take place and meaningful support is going to be provided. And as Mr. Meyer was alluding to through questions that he was asked, our goal is really to over-recruit and create those problems. And I don't know if the teams had conversations like that. It is a great idea and a very cost-efficient way of offering additional services. So maybe Mr. Meyer would be better to finish that answer.
I apologize for leaving that out. There is obviously every opportunity for our students to continue accessing the programs they have access to now throughout the summer. Last year, because of the pandemic, we did release a lot of things that were just virtual in nature, as you suggest, and many of the schools were having reading challenges or virtual field trips, and send this in, and when you come back in August, we're going to reward you, because they recognize the importance of staying connected, not just with the district, right, but with their teachers, with their principals throughout the course of the year. So that was something that we did last year. I would like to see that continued. Did not get that into this presentation. I was thinking more about the explicit partnerships that we have with the organizations and the June and July traditional programs. But I agree that's something that we will roll out, and you will see that forthcoming.
I agree. It wasn't a conversation that we had last week, for sure, but I think it would be optimal to add another slide here to endorse, some of the virtual opportunities, even some, you mentioned virtual field trips, but there are even some virtual dissections, science dissections, and some of these STEM activities that can be done virtually as well. But I love it. Thank you very much for including that.
So I just want to thank everyone for coming out and providing your support. Although you only spent 20 minutes here, I know the hours that you put into contributing to putting this programming together, not just over the summer, but the entire school year. So thank you for putting all of this together and everything you do for our children. We talk about that 90% for third grade. We talk about a graduation rate that's in the top 10% of the state. This is the only way it happens. A community coming together, all putting our shoulder to the wheel around the initiatives that will move us there. This is a great example of partnership, and who benefits our children. So thank you very much. I'll give everyone, if you wanted to sneak out now before we go to the next item, we'll allow you that time.
Really does take a village.
Absolutely.
Thank you, village.
Bye, Kendrick.
Is there any, I could ask this question, sort of silly, is there any, not silly, is there any coordination like with Boys and Girls?
For the next three items, B, C, and D. Mr. Meyer.
So thank you, Dr. Moore, through the chair, as previously discussed, this is the item before the board to assure that the students that are not identified for specific academic programs for which there is funding, that we set the fee schedule for those that are going to participate in the STARS, or the extended summer program. And so that is the item before you. I don't know if there's further questions about that. It's pretty straightforward, but happy to answer any questions as needed.
I have a couple. Just looking at this information and then looking at the balance in our extended day, which is about $1 million, correct, Mr. Fagan? Okay. And how much do they take in a month? 95?
Jerry, yes, ma'am, about $100,000 a month in tuition.
I just want to make sure, and I see a one-time registration fee, $20 per child. With that kind of balance and what our parents are facing now with COVID and maybe not having jobs, I just want to make sure that we don't eliminate anyone from here. The late pickup fee and so forth, $10 per child every 15 minutes, those are the kind of things that I also have a concern about only to the students that attend summer school in the morning. Is that just a barrier, or is that something that we can maybe look at with the kind of fund balance that we have and $95,000 a month coming in? Any thoughts on that? I just don't want anyone eliminated.
Through the chair, so as far as the balance is concerned, as I took over that program, we are going to bring a proposal for a 5-year plan of what we will do with that. And so it is utilizing that to improve the quote-unquote extended day after-school STARS program. So we do intend to utilize that funds to support this type of early learning. So it will be money well spent in the future.
Can a parent apply for a waiver or a voucher with that money in the balance?
Oh, through the chair, I think the intent is to ensure that we turn no child away. When we learned that that money was being generated at such a high cost, and now no level of intentionality regarding how it was being spent. So I challenged Mr. Meyer and team really to put together a budget in order to ensure that there is a comprehensive program in place. So I think some of the responses that you'll see in terms of maximizing enrollment and maximizing the quality of support, both during the confines of the school day, as well as reinvesting some of those funds back into program and resources within the confines of the school day. So
Right.
we have a pretty comprehensive plan that we're in the process of creating.
And with I know $100 per week is not expensive compared to what other camps may be. Please, I understand that. But since it is run with our school district, I just want to make sure that, a one-time registration fee, why do we have that when we don't have any kind of shortage? So just
Right.
look into it.
Absolutely.
Ms. Rosario.
Dr. Jones, you and I are on the same page on this. We've had this conversation about the fee schedule, and I asked the same exact questions. I certainly would be in support of, if we can afford it, to not charge the registration fee. They are our students. Now, if we had an opportunity, for example, for a homeschooler who wanted to register, if we had the capacity to allow, or a visitor from a visiting cousin, for example. I don't even know if that's ever been done, but, someone who's not a current registered student, maybe we could charge the registration fee for that student, but I'm not advocating that that's what we're allowing to do. But my thought is, if we can get to a place where we don't have to charge our own students the registration fee, I certainly would support that. I do understand the late pickup fee because we're charging for the staff that will be there with the children if the parents don't pick up, so I get that. With regard to this, though, what we didn't mention before or talk about that just dawned on me was food and snacks. Are those included in these programs? Because we're not charging parents for that, right? Okay, good. So,
Through the chair, that would be through the National School Lunch Summer
Right.
Program. So, yeah, no charge, and we're reimbursed, so our cost is covered.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
So I think it'd be a good idea just to give the board additional information regarding how we intend to spend that money. One of the major initiatives is increasing the pay for those individuals who are working those services. If we're going to have quality programs, we need quality pay for quality aftercare support. So there is a definite need to enhance the salary schedule, which will be coming to you later in the year under the salary schedule, to ensure that we're providing meaningful employment to meaningful people.
And through the chair, the only other thing that I would add for this is that this program is entirely self-funded. And so the staff members that are providing the administrative support for that, their salaries are paid through that administrative fee. So while they are our students, we do have to pay for that position. It isn't a position that comes from the FEFP or something of that nature. So while, I understand the concerns about the $20 when you think about, how much it costs to pay someone for a month of their salary to run that program, that's where that's coming from.
Makes sense.
Ms. Berenberg.
Yeah, I have no problem with the late pickup fee penalty because you probably have a waiting list on a lot of these. And so when you have a parent, sometimes they abuse it, and you're sitting there waiting for them for an hour, 2 hours after the program is over, I think it's only fair to have some sort of paper that they sign at the beginning saying that if that happens more than twice, third time, we'll go to the next person on the line. I just think to be fair to parents who are on the waiting list as well.
Dr. Schiff.
Yeah, on the fee and on the late pickup fee, is there a vehicle where, if there is an emergency, if parents do, there are parents who, for example, are required to work late and don't have a choice about it or they lose their job. Is there a vehicle that in extreme circumstances like that, either the fee can be waived or it can be reviewed? And presuming that this is not on a regular basis, I'm not assuming that it happens regularly, but there are circumstances. And for some of the parents who may find themselves in those circumstances, they may be the parents for whom the additional fees are most challenging. And I want to be sensitive to that.
If I could just chime in here, I think of the Boys and Girls Club, and I know my wife and I have contributed to their summer program, and they give scholarships. and I'm not sure exactly what the methodology is for how they go about it, but they raise a fair amount of money specifically for scholarships. So I'm wondering, I mean, we could sit here all day and come up with a laundry list of things that the foundation we're talking about could help. But I wouldn't want to compete, let's say, with the Educational Foundation, which is historically, as I understand it, provided funding for a lot of the programs. If you consider this a program, maybe a conversation with Mr. Herron, or it could be something that we could add to our list and somehow raise privately funds to be allocated to whatever part of the program that you all are much more familiar with than I. Just a thought.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think part of the, and we say illuminate, and I was referencing being part of the Illuminate summer offering, is that we eliminate the need for competition and we create the environment and space to be collegial. We know the academic needs of students, and pairing them to programs that are free or partnered with allows us to match students to a defined deficiency or academic need to the appropriate program. I think some of these stuff with crossover mission is really, you know, as Mr. Meyer is going to release a percent proficient for algebra, that's being very strategic, you know, say, well, we can't get them to come for algebra camp. We know crossover mission is doing summer programming. Let's put those two needs together to maximize that opportunity. And it's creating that, even with the Boys and Girls Club, maybe there's opportunities for us to send instructional staff there to provide services. So it's growing that partnership to maximize the funds that we have. And in response to your question, I'll have to get more information, but I would tend to think, knowing that what I know is that we err on the side of caution and are very lenient with how we're working with our parents.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, next.
All right. To the chair, my next item we're presenting tonight is an articulation agreement with Indian River State College to ensure that our students who are completing CTE coursework could earn credit should they want that from IRSC. This is different than the dual enrollment agreements that we'll be bringing in June. This particular agreement, as you will see, talks about the different course pathways and the credits that IRSC has that match up along with those CTE pathways. Lots of great discussion around CTE and our next steps for that. Very, very encouraged that next year we will go through another comprehensive local needs assessment where we will be able to take a very, very deep dive at our clusters and at our programs to make sure that we are in full alignment with the needs of the community. So I'm very excited to be a part of that work next year, but this is to ensure the current programs that we have, our students are able to get their credits.
Questions? Dr. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. I had the opportunity to talk with Dr. Massey before he retired, and also Casey Lunsford. When we look at the career in tech now and the articulation, do you think everything's going as should be, or is there anything we could improve upon to make sure that our articulation's really working?
To the chair, I think like I said, very encouraged by the conversations that are happening to make sure that all components of the district are aligned with IRSC and our missions aligned through that. We don't need to, it harkens back to what Dr. Moore said. We are a collaborative organization and we want to partner well with IRSC. There's no need to duplicate services.
Right.
And we need to be ensuring that we're maximizing resources. If there's already one program that's being offered, then let's put kids into that program and utilize resources for another program so that our students have more opportunities. And so that's the style of work that I'd like to lead through the next CLNA to ensure that wherever our students are, that they have the pathway that they want and they need, and that we're not, stepping on each other in competition for the same program. That doesn't make any sense to me. Whether that be TCTC or VBHS or IRSC, the important thing is that all students of Indian River County have access to high-quality programs and a multitude of programs.
Okay, Thank you.
Any other comments, questions on this item? You're on a roll.
All right, so I have another presentation. Cue the, there we go, right on time. Thank you, Mr. Heiser. And so our next presentation is on the ELA adoption. Essentially, let me say essentially, every 5 years we go through instructional materials adoptions for each of our core content areas. As Governor DeSantis became appointed in 2018, he requested a revision of the Florida standards to eliminate Common Core. So the ELA adoption that was scheduled a number of years ago was put on hold until the standards could be reviewed, and that has been conducted. They have been adopted, and so here we are with an adoption process for a new set of ELA materials. And so I'll step through the process that the district has gone to bring a recommendation to the board for these. And that is the timelines and the recommendations. Very quick, I'll skip that slide. So back in November, as the bid specs were released from the state, we formed our committee. I shared with you guys during different presentations that I've had. I very much was looking forward to this. As a former director of Just Read Florida, I worked very closely with the development of the standards and the instructional materials adoption bid specs at the state level. So I was on pins and needles personally. I don't know that everybody else was as excited about instructional materials as I was, but very much was looking forward to that. Got our committee rolling in November, had an organizational meeting December 16th. The publishers were able to come in January in this room. We invited the public. Anyone who wanted to review the materials was able to come through and take a look at the different products that the publishers had. On February 4th, we convened our committee proper and analyzed the feedback from teachers, and those committees made recommendations. Subsequent to that, on February 4th, we took down the other materials that were not voted on by the committee, and they have been on display for the past 20 days, or longer actually, prior to this meeting today on the 9th. What we were requesting tonight is to have a notice of public hearing put forth tomorrow for the public hearing to be scheduled for April 13th. Now, a couple of things to keep in note about that. The state in statute has to release what they consider to be the state adopted instructional materials. That per statute is supposed to be released by the commissioner on April 1st. In order to not wait any more than we need to on the state. That's why we developed our process and the timeline that I just described. Having had some specific knowledge to the standards and to the bid specs, I felt like we would not be, out of order to move forward in that. I do believe that the products that we are recommending will meet the bid specs. But of course, it would not be something that we would continue with. We'd need to go back to the drawing board should April 1st come around and the products that we anticipate selecting, if they're not on that list. The other thing to keep in mind there is that we are required to go through a petition process, 30-day window there, that someone could petition the board's recommendation. But keep in mind that would be dependent on the petition saying that the recommendation does not meet the bid specs. So knowing that we wouldn't be bringing this until after the commissioner says that these materials do meet the criteria by the state, it really, I don't anticipate there being an issue there. But we did have both pathways on this as far as May 25th or June 8th. If we have to go through the petition process, we will do so, and then we'd still be able to rectify that by June 8th in order to bring the final contract to the board. This right now, what we're bringing to you, the recommendations, is absent of a budget. We are still working to get the price that works best for our teachers, for our students, for our learners. And once again, it would not be appropriate to bring that yet until we know that the materials themselves are state approved and that we can make it through that process. So, drum roll please for the committee recommendations. We very excited that the committee, almost unanimously in elementary school, is 18-1. Voted for Amplify. I believe Amplify to be clearly one of the better curriculums. Myself, very excited about the intentionality that it has in meeting the bid specs. The bid specs of the state statutes actually even require that the ELA materials for K-5 have explicit systematic approaches to teaching reading. And also it's heavy on knowledge, background knowledge, as I've shared with folks. You know, the ability of a student to comprehend a passage is directly tied to the student's prior knowledge of that passage. So building knowledge is important. Everything cannot be conceptual. I know there's a lot of talk in the 21st century about being conceptual thinkers, but what I would like my children to be successful at is actually having a body of knowledge. They should not depend on Google for the rest of their lives. We want them to actually gain knowledge. And then middle school, they were in 2 separate rooms. It was interesting that they both decided to pursue Amplify. I think that will enable our teachers as they potentially move between elementary school, middle school, as our students progress from elementary to middle school, as the families who may have students who are in both elementary and middle school, that they do not have to learn 2 different products. And so there's a lot of benefit to having Amplify for K through 8. They do not have a 9 through 12 product. I don't know that the high school committee would have gone with that anyway, but the high school committee recommended the Savas product. All of these products, you know, very excited about this. You know, this is, you know, something we look at. There is a third-party review site, numerous of them actually. One of them is called Ed Reports. If you're interested, we can send those links. And they have extremely high ratings, all 3 of the programs, as a third-party reviewer. So it wasn't just our teachers' institutional knowledge that were voting for this, but other people across the country as well rate these products very highly. This is something that we, like I said, being in Tallahassee, wanting new material in front of our students is something we drastically needed years ago. We recognized that the materials that were initially adopted through no fault of the district or states, we just learned a lot about instructional materials in the past 8 years. And I think these products are going to be a real pivotal point in us accomplishing the goals that we have. Along with the core materials, you have intensive courses. Now, requesting the board to adopt and approve the Lexia and the HMH Reading 180 as far as materials that would be utilized as the core instructional material in an intervention course. The reason we're asking for 2 in secondary is that we know that not all learners are the same. Right? An intervention by definition is something specific to the learner, and where applicable, we want to have more options on the table instead of less. And so both of these interventions are evidence-based interventions that would meet the requirement of the state's reading plan, and so seeking the recommendation to adopt those for our intensive courses as well. And so just as a reminder of the next steps, the notice of public hearing would begin on the 10th, the actual public hearing next month, and then we will await the petition period and then bring the formal contract for the materials to the board in either late May or early June. And then they will start arriving. Lots of plans on the way. You know, obviously we've got to wait until everything's formally approved before we go too far, but we can certainly plan those dates in the summer where we're going to be supporting the teachers. You know, there'll be another board presentation that I can give about the implementation of this. The presentation here today was really more around the adoption of the curriculum, but I can answer any questions we have about the implementation as well. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I share your enthusiasm for instructional materials. Having served on the State Instructional Materials Committee for Science, I realize how important it is, also what a big business it is. It was eye-opening to serve on that committee. My garage was filled because they have to send you every single bit. And mine was science, so they sent you everything, all the lab materials, everything. The reason why I say that is because for me as a reviewer, I had a year to look at everything. I really didn't have enough time to look at every page of every book, to go through that. And what our job was to do was to make sure that it was appropriate and there were lots of checklists, but to make sure that it met the standards that districts could approve it. So, like you said, we can't approve anything until it goes through the state adoption, and that is, what's the final date on that?
By statute, they're supposed to release that April 1st.
Okay, April 1st. So it's great that we're ahead of the ballgame. I like that. Here's the concern I have. Have we had people review all of these? Because we've discussed these books, you and I. And I'm excited that we're finally looking at what's best for kids, not necessarily what's best for our beginning teachers. And I say that because in the past, we have chosen books that are better for teachers because they're easier to teach from. And that's why we talked about the stress of how much PD would be needed for moving to a book like this. My concern is that have we looked at all of the stories in all of the books, which I'm asking you this because I want to make sure that they're culturally sensitive, that we have looked through all of them to make sure that they're historically accurate and culturally sensitive.
So, to the chair, I cannot promise you that I read every single one, although I've read as many as I can. Ms. Becerra, I don't know if anyone's read if I know that every single page of every single material has been reviewed. I don't want to give that answer. We can certainly begin to do that, and then I can give you that green light. I think that, we were looking to make sure that they met the criteria of the bid specs from the states, that they were the highest rated. I know that Amplify did send us the entire package for every single grade level after we said that we're leaning that direction. So it's certainly something that we can pursue. But I would be probably misrepresenting the truth if I were to say that someone's turned every single page of every component. There's a lot of auxiliary,
I
supplementary
understand.
things. So we can get to work on that.
Here's my concern. I believe there are certain things that a parent should be teaching their kids and not us. And I want to make sure that we are strictly sticking to material that is not as sensitive. And if it is sensitive, like we've done with some material, I taught health and sex ed, so I understand what it's like to send out a form letter to a parent and say, I need you to sign this to approve that this is what I'm going to teach your child so you understand what I'm going to be teaching them. So that's why I'm concerned about that, is I don't want a parent to be surprised by something that is read to their child. Because if you go to our county library and you look at some of those books, I was shocked at some of the toddler books that I saw just a month ago in there. Because I thought, I don't want to read that to my child, my grandchild. So, I think that we just, if it's in the classroom, sometimes there are things that are read or taught in the classroom that a parent gets upset with later. And I just want to make sure that they're aware of the fact that if there's a culturally sensitive topic or story, that we're giving them that heads up ahead of time.
Absolutely. And I will say that one of the things, one of the good points when you say about culturally diverse, the content is recognized as being culturally diverse. So I think that that's a great point. I've not seen anything, and nor I think that there would be stuff, red flags all over the place if it was developmentally inappropriate as far as explicit content, things of that nature. But certainly we can be, I think on a case-by-case basis, there are statutes that allow parents to exempt themselves from certain components of instruction. But we will review all these to make sure that none of the passages are explicit in nature.
And the other concern I have is in this climate that we live in right now with political bias. I know that bias was one of those check marks that I had to look at when I was looking at science materials, because let's face it, science has a lot of that. I want to make sure that we're being very, very sensitive to political bias as well.
Can you say more about how you mean that, Mrs. Barenborg?
Yeah, when they give you the criteria to review a book, one of the things you have to look at is lots of biases. Is it bias towards kids of a certain culture? Would it offend somebody if they read it? I just want to make sure that sometimes when you look at a story, you may think it's fine. Let me give you an example. One of the first fourth grade passages, because I taught fourth grade the first year we had the writing test. One of the first passages that the kids had been asked to write about was, and this may not seem culturally biased to you, but it was about Disney, okay? Well, it was culturally biased because and later on it became a huge argument because kids that lived around Orlando and knew what Disney was, or kids that could afford to go there, had more of an opportunity to answer that question correctly. That's what I'm talking about, is looking at passages to make sure that if it's teaching something that a parent would be a little sensitive to, that we're letting parents know, at least, that that's a sensitive topic.
Yeah, if I can follow up on that, because I think your example is a good one, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. What I worry about is that, as you mentioned, we are in such a highly politicized climate. that what people are sensitive about has escalated.
Yes.
And there is a fine line between being responsive to political sensitivity and doing the job of teaching and of education. And I want to make sure that that's part of the conversation as well, and that we aren't erring so much on the side of being worried about not just who we're offending, that's not really the way I want to say it, but that we are sensitive to the ways in which it is also our job to provide an analytic perspective, a broad perspective, developmentally appropriate, of course, but outside of a political arena, outside of the ways some of these issues have been overly politicized. And so I think that's part of what you're getting at, but I want us to be sensitive around that as well. There are certain ways of teaching that it is also our job to make sure we make people aware of, and they get to make choices, right? They get to make choices about.
And parents get to make choices. That's my point. A parent gets to make that choice. And I think that sometimes there are sensitive topics that parents aren't aware of that are being taught in the classroom that go beyond the standards. If we stick to standards that have been approved by our legislature and have been agreed on, that's what we teach, and we're fine. That's what I'm saying. But there are some sensitive topics. Like I said, when I taught health, I had to make sure that when I taught certain topics, even if it was in the standard, I wanted to give the parent a heads up that I was going to be teaching their child that. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't at all disagree with giving parents a heads up. But I also want us to be aware also of what our role is. And I'm not suggesting taking discretion away from parents. I'm suggesting that there are areas that it is also our job to give a broad, robust, and full awareness.
I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying when there are sensitive stories about topics that parents may be sensitive to, I think that it's our job to let them know that this might be something they want to read ahead of time and feel comfortable with their child reading. That's what I'm saying. I still think it's a parent's right to know what their child is reading in school. Period.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that.
Have you taught elementary school? Have you taught middle school? I'm telling you, sometimes there are stories and sometimes there are things and topics that come up that you're sitting there and you've got the standards and you're sitting there and saying, this could get a little out of hand because kids say things or it goes in a different direction. That's what I'm saying. So we have to be sensitive to that. We have to be sensitive to that. I still think it's a parent's right to know what their child's being exposed to.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm also saying that we have certain educational responsibilities as well. I'm not disagreeing with you.
I'm not saying not to.
Mrs. Rosario.
Mr. Meyer, I would add to this conversation with regard to supporting the idea of having someone take another look at the materials, but not just one person. I would at least get two, because one person may have a bias, a personal, political, or some other kind of bias, whereas two heads are better than one. Just to have an extra view on what might be culturally sensitive or politically sensitive in a climate such as what we have now. And I think to talk about, how I have taught the lower levels, even in the middle school, it's just, there are topics that have been raised on all levels. I think my concern isn't so much ELA, but more in the social studies and the civics area. But I digress. So right now we're
Those aren't
talking
up for
about
adoption
ELA.
right now, believe me, we'll talk about that.
Right now we're talking about ELA, and so I think part of also the discussion here would extend to the professional development that is given to teachers. You're welcome. The professional development that is given to teachers and the instruction from the leadership team on how teachers teach the materials. I think that is incredibly, because as a teacher, when we are given the standards to teach, we have to know and we have to be professional in our, and I say our because I'm still a licensed certified Florida teacher and New York teacher, is that we have to be careful not to impose our personal beliefs on particular topics that we are teaching. Once in a while, it's okay to give our opinion and say it is our opinion, but to actually give the instruction that states, my belief is the only belief, and that's how I'm going to teach this chapter or this story, that's wrong teaching. So I think that, you all are listening to what board members are saying here today, but I certainly would recommend that at least 2 more people, at a minimum, take a look so you have 4 eyes.
So through the chair, absolutely, and I was chomping at the bit. You set me up perfectly for this. So one of the
Perfect.
things that we know needs to occur is districts supporting the implementation of this
Exactly.
through the redesignation of curriculum maps and pacing guides. And so we are pulling together the instructional coaches and the teachers during the summer to make this happen. And a part of that can clearly be a consideration for any text that may be sensitive in any way, shape, or form to support the teacher's implementation of that text.
Yeah,
And so
I
that's-
think it's so important. I
That's
mean,
right.
because there are some people who are getting offended by Mr. Potato Head. And even
Or
Pepe
Dr.
Le
Seuss.
Pew is being, canceled. Pepe Le Pew. But, I don't find that offensive, and that's my personal opinion. However, we're in this time. This is where we are now. And as board members, and I might add for the public viewing, we are nonpartisan elected board members. Our position here and our discussions and our voting and our decision-making here ought to be nonpartisan on all levels as a nonpartisan elected member of this board. And so every decision that we make ought to be very simply for the best of all children, whatever that might be. Not politically pushed, not politically endorsed, and certainly not driven by what the culture is telling us to do, or whatever that is defined as nowadays.
Absolutely, and through the chair, I think I think our educators are prepared to do that, and the district leadership is prepared to do that, and we also need to, be responsive to our students and ensure that as we present the material, that it's presented in a way that is doesn't turn the students off to the learning. So as we develop these lesson plans, I think that we can definitely, where it's appropriate, ensure that the right training and the right explanation is given, so that the teachers don't feel uncomfortable talking about a certain topic, any topic in front of their students. They feel well prepared to walk in and to be able to deliver those standards with the materials that we've provided.
Great, thank you, that's all I'm
Thank you.
asking.
Dr. Jones.
A special thank you to Ms. Hamler and the group of teachers who worked so very hard on this. I had the pleasure of running that for science 4 years ago, and it is a lot of work. Absolutely, and I mean, I can't say page by page, but we were going pretty closely on that. What were the standards, how are they being taught, and so forth, but I taught 5th grade through 12th grade in language arts, social studies, reading, physical education, a few others, and yes, kids can get you off topic, and they can do it well. And I knew when they were doing it, so you just had to pull back. But what Ms. Rosario was saying is correct. In fact, it is in our standards, our board policy for ethical conduct, and that is that you do not play that political game, that you do not discriminate, that we are here for all students, all parents, and the entire community. And we're always going to do the best we can when we make these decisions. But no matter what, you might have a few that don't like that. Of course, my next question is how much does it cost? But that's later. I know that. In digital, all digital
It's
and
expensive, it's always
class, I was amazed at how much it cost 4 years ago. But even then, 4 years ago, that committee came together with diverse opinions on what was best for our students. That can be done. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Jones, and Dr. Garrick and Ms. Hamler do deserve a lot of credit, so I should have referenced them along with Ms. Basura. So thank you to the team.
Okay, good discussion.
Absolutely.
Dr. Jones, Dr. Moore. back to
That
you.
concludes the Rick Meyer show. And now we'll transition to the Scott Bass's show. He's going to present items E, F, and G, which are transportation service contracts together, I believe.
Yeah, through the chair. Good afternoon. This should be rather short. I'm bringing into you next month the transportation agreements for the 5 charter schools, 3 nonprofit groups, and 2 extracurricular groups. These are all agreements that we have had in previous years. In your package right now, it is a 1-year contract. And the reason why it's a 1-year contract is that's what we had that we could give you. We are wanting to go to a 3-year contract just to cut down on the repetition of bringing this back every year. And it's also difficult for the other organizations, the charter schools, because they have to go through the whole process and get it approved by their board and then get it to us on time. And it doesn't change each year. So we're looking at a 3-year contract, working with Katie and their team to get verbiage in the contract that will allow us to get out of the contract, or excuse me, agreement, if some external factors are in place. I've got a sample for one of them already, and we should have the rest of them very soon, and we will substitute that for the April board meeting, the first April board meeting. So you've got the 1-year contracts here, but it'll be changed eventually. So all charter schools, everybody's on board with it. The only group that we are waiting to hear back from is the ORCA group, and I spoke to the young lady today and said that they've received it and they will be contacting us, but everyone else is good with it. So that is actually items E, F, and G.
Question?
Go ahead.
You want to go first?
Yeah,
You want
that's
first,
fine.
Lester?
That's fine. Just so that board members know, we don't, again, I know that we've said this before, we don't get to have opportunities to talk, but so you all know the conversation that Mr. Bass and myself and Dr. Moore had with regard to this is that I think it's wonderful that we can go to a 3-year contract if we can do that. However, I want to be able to put in there a clause. I don't know if legal has been able to do that yet. Something in writing that we could honor if any one of these outside organizations have a change in financial status or don't receive the grants that they receive. If they need to change or cancel the contract at any time, I want us to be able to honor that without any penalties. So long as, everybody's caught up to date with, whatever up until that point of the use of transportation. But, these organizations really run year to year based on outside fundraising capabilities. So many of them being 501c3s, if they don't have the funding for the transportation, it'll be hard for them to move forward with that. So I just want us to be mindful of that. In a 3-year contract, sometimes you can't break it, but I want us to be able to have that flexibility with them.
I would think every contract should have a material change clause in it. You can call it what you want, force majeure, whatever the circumstances are, particularly a multi-year contract, as Ms. Rosario said. I don't know how you could define material change, but it could be specific to the organization or the services being contracted for, or it could be a more general, but you want that out, I think.
Yes, sir, I agree with both of you, absolutely. And I believe, Katie, can you speak to the verbiage that you all have worked up thus far?
Yes, I can't completely speak to it because another attorney in the office is handling it, but we definitely, there's no problem with getting them to be 3-year contracts, and we will definitely add a clause that in the event of force majeure or, some unexpected financial downturn that they can
Yeah,
terminate.
gas prices.
Yeah, really, definitely.
Thank you.
Dr. Jones, you?
No, Terry was
Oh,
next.
sorry.
The point I was going to bring, as we discussed gas prices, exactly, is in there, if it's a 3-year term and prices either go up or remarkably go down, will that change as far as the specifics of the contract, or is that kind of a, does it state in there exactly that it can change?
Through the chair, I believe it does, but also too, if we have an increase, it will reflect that increase.
Right,
Because
we
I think
did-
that's what we've done before.
Yeah, we discussed that part of it.
And we talk about gas fuel prices. Remember, 73 of our 110 buses are propane. So, you know, hopefully that fuel source is a little more stable than diesel and/or gas.
That's right, okay.
Dr. Jones?
Mr. Bass, this is a little off topic, but at what point do our bus drivers go into overtime? After how many hours?
It will be 40.
So they work 40-hour weeks? They're not considered full-time, though, are they?
They're not considered full-time. So okay, so we don't need to look at it as overtime. We need to look at it as trips outside of their regular working
Okay.
hours.
Okay.
So they will get paid for those trips outside of their regular, morning and afternoon route. And obviously if it's in summertime, they'll be paid hourly. They're on an hourly schedule there also.
I was talking to Ms. Idle at the last equity meeting, and, it's tough to find bus drivers when Waste Management will pay more and so forth, but I'll talk to you more about that. I just want to make sure we are giving our drivers as much as possible.
And just since you brought that up, Ms. Idlett and I are meeting tomorrow to talk about that very
Good.
issue.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Thank you. So not on the agenda, but I did want to briefly address our equity and diversity position. I know there's been some concern regarding that position from a community perspective. As you know, that is a position that we reviewed at 2 different workshops. The intent really is to ensure that every single child in this district has the opportunity to walk into our buildings, our facilities, feel embraced, accepted. It is a prerequisite for teaching and learning. And as we push ourselves to being a world-class educational system, diversity is at the forefront of that work. As you all know, we are under a desegregation order, partial unitary status, and we have, under the leadership of this board, done some very significant work over the last several months to really move that work forward. It has been significant in terms of the volume of work and the progress that we've had in a very, very short amount of time. With the acknowledgement, there's still a significant amount of work yet to be done. So as I sought the opportunity to be a superintendent, equity and diversity, and the joint order and partial unitary status, the desegregation order was something that was attractive to me because I saw it as an opportunity to bring about positive change and contribution to a community in which I am now a part of. And that's the intent of this position. That is the sole intent of this position. I think each and every single one of you know the volume of work that is surrounded the joint plan and the ability for us to stay tasked on that particular level of work is a priority. There have been questions regarding the funding of the position. And as discussed during workshops, when I could complete the overall reshifting of the organization, it will come in at a total cost savings of 2 to 3% from a district perspective. We moved this position ahead of time in order to be consistent with the pace of work associated with the joint plan. Otherwise, it would have came over the summer, which has always been the intent, really to keep the work moving in a positive direction. But there will not be an additional district cost in terms of administrative staff. Matter of fact, quite the opposite. We are pushing our funds into schools as close to students as possible. We led the state in terms of pay increase for our teachers. We've put our money where our mouth is in terms of valuing what is important which is teachers. So it's not a matter of building district staff. We will continue to reduce district staff every year under my leadership. There's been questions regarding our current equity coordinator, and by intention, we've redesigned that position to be in service of adults and in service of children. Two of the initiatives that I highlighted during my mid-year review came under the leadership of that position. That is the micro-credentialing that we're working on for all schools to participate in professional development. That is the crucial conversations where assistant principals, principals, and district staff are being trained. You got to keep the main thing the main thing. And that position has been working extremely hard in order to have a focus and attention towards students and towards the faculty and staff. But the volume of work is significant. The intention is, some of the things that I've heard are absolutely foreign to me. It is not my intention. It is not who I am as a person. But I believe every single person walks in our school system needs to understand that it is a priority for us that all students feel embraced, they feel accepted. And coming from a place where only 9% of the population or the student population was white, I understand the impact. I come from a majority district. So there is significant work to do. But we're not brainwashing, we're not trying to cancel any culture, we're trying to provide an environment where students feel safe. And I need to ensure that the volume of work for all staff is focused in on their individual responsibilities. And some of the need for that position is right there. If, to be more specific in the job description, absolutely. Those are things that I continue to do. The name of the position, as long as the work's being done, it's open. And the good news here is we don't have an item coming for approval. So there are opportunities to explore how we can be specific within our community to ensure that this work gets done. So that is a commitment I have made to each and every single one of you and ultimately to our community as well. So I just wanted to say that. There is no position, we haven't interviewed for anything, but I just wanted to make those statements. Thank you.
If I can just add a couple of comments. We've all been copied on numerous emails. We've all received them because they come to all of us. There's a lot of people that are in favor of this position based on their understanding of what it means, and there are many that are against it based on their understanding of what it means. And it goes to, and I'll put myself into the category of, I don't know that I ever thought about it, but the difference, I think I had this conversation with Mr. Bass the other day and Beth Hofer, the difference between equity and equality. And I don't want to make this a political discussion because everything seems to be political these days, and it's unfortunate. But I think there's people, when they hear that or read it, or somebody's interpretation that happens to have a long list in their Rolodex, what's presented to the readers is through the lens of the person writing, in support of or against. And there's such a difference of opinion out there. And I don't know how we, the district, maybe this is a teaching moment for us. If there's a way to communicate, if there's a way to publicize, to be more detailed in what we mean, it's one thing to put a job description out there and you got everything under the sun. As I've discussed with Dr. Moore the other day, maybe we ought to narrow it. You can always add to it over time, but when you put everything but the kitchen sink in a job description, it gives everybody out there the opportunity to imagine to their worst fears or their best fears, what does this mean in a climate that is, it's not particularly constructive for the purposes of teaching young people that there are two sides to every argument, at least two, maybe more, and that our goal is I think Mr. Rosario said it or somebody earlier, that Our goal is to allow these children, these kids, and the older they get, the more important it becomes to be able to think for themselves. So I worry about this a little bit. So it's really a question that can't be answered, but if we can come up with a way to make sure in people's minds that it's not their worst fears that are being addressed by the creation of this position, but in fact, and I would also add, and then I'll be quiet, I found out when I ran for this office, at least in the part of Indian River County that I live in, very few people knew that this county was under a desegregation order. Me being one. And I think if you take the time, and we all explain all of this differently, if you take the time to nothing more than explain that this is a position that in part will manage the progress we hope to make toward unitary status and well beyond, because on the academic achievement part, that's never going to end. You're always going to have certain groups of people, for whatever reason, they move here from someplace else, and they may find that this district is ahead of where they came from, so they're behind. Or you may have people moving here that come from a highly competitive district, and they feel held back because we're teaching to the lowest common denominator. There's all of these thoughts go through people's minds. And I don't know what the answer is, but maybe over the next couple of months we can give some thought on how we can use this to so that people aren't afraid, that people are maybe educated a little bit as to what this means and what the benefits to everybody will be. But initially, my feeling is that the management of the interaction between the equity committee, the school district, the school board, the NAACP, this position will have a major role to play in that interaction as we hopefully move forward after, in some respects, being stalled a little bit here for the last period of time.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think hindsight's always 20/20. As I have participated in 2 district reorganizations since I've been here, they came with items that were extremely explicit and detailed regarding the rationale of office development, position reductions, cost savings. And at this time, I'm trying, in making commitments to board members in the community, that we would interview for positions for job descriptions. Wanted to get those job descriptions out and approved. So sometimes allowing the entire community to see all the pieces of the puzzle and come together with a detailed explanation as to why provides a better explanation, while at the same time continuing to support or deepening the understanding around what equity and inclusion means here in the school district of Indian River County, while honoring everyone in this county and who we are, but at the same time moving this work forward to ensure students feel accepted, and to ensure a student that walks into a school and based on the color of his skin isn't 4.5 times more likely to be suspended, to ensure that a student who scores something on an FSA end-of-year exam and in the same as a white student isn't afforded the opportunity to be in the honors class. There's work that needs to be done in this system. There is bias that naturally has been created. There's a foundation of work that we have to do. And I said it on Bob Seuss. If you look at our students, and everyone knows where I come from in Miami, it was not a school that had attained unitary status a number of years ago, but very segregated in the hallways and where you saw the different groups of students. You don't see that with our students. You see a united student body, and that's something that really is encouraging, that we need to embrace and support. So, in some cases, we can learn something from our students.
I'll just add one more thought. There was a letter to the editor, I believe, in the Sebastian Daily News that I think we all got. I happened to read it, but then I think we all got an email referencing it. I don't know whether it's a good or a bad idea, but at some point you might want to, or we might want to, write a letter to the editor, whether it's the Bastion or the Press Journal or TC Palm.
Well, I'm always willing to engage in the conversation, wasn't afforded the
She's right
opportunity.
behind you.
Well, but I'm just suggesting if I don't know, sometimes you can protest too much, and you start to, on the other hand, you don't want to ignore, and I frankly don't know where the balance is, but it's just something to think about as this evolves here over the next month or two.
It's an
Dr.
interesting
Schiff.
thought, actually, Mr. Barefoot, because as you know, when we speak independently, we cannot speak for the board. We can speak as individuals. And so any individual of us writing a letter speaks for ourselves. We don't speak for the board. I don't think it's ever come up before to have a coordinated board position in such a way. So that's an interesting thought. I haven't really thought about that and what it would take to produce that. Couple things just to clarify with Dr. Moore, if I may. One, to clarify, this position is being nationally advertised, and we invite applicants locally, nationally, internally, externally. It is open to anybody to apply, and we welcome all of those applications.
That is correct.
As I understand it, the goal of this position, which has somewhat been said here, but is, what I understand is that the work thus far addressing the DSEG order, the equity work, the African American achievement plans that are now both district-wide and in all of the schools is taking up an inordinate amount of your time and staff time who have other responsibilities. So what I understand is that this position and some of the support is to help have a position that is specifically to guide, to support you in guiding that work that is now being spread out among a number of other people and taking them away from jobs that is already in their job description.
Through the chair, that is correct, with the one caveat, based on the frequency of meetings between NAACP and the school board, the volume of work over the last couple of weeks has been significantly less on me. So when I posted this position, that is the truth, but the volume of work over the last 2 weeks has been significantly less. While at the same time, in order to continue with the same momentum, yes, we need to ensure that the level of intention that I've had on it over the last 14 months continues as I can take a more global stance in terms of other areas of the system. So a great level of intentionality placed on diversity and equity, a lot of foundations in place from the design of the district, the intentionality in data comms and meeting with principals. We've done significant work in order to be global while at the same time continuing that priority forward. There needs to be additional eyes on that work, yes.
Well, and to that end, I'll follow up, and this is my last follow-up. To that end, what I also hear you saying is that while in recent weeks the amount of that work has diminished, there is not only no guarantee that that will continue, and we don't know the scope of work coming forward, and that the scope of work up until the last couple of months posed a considerable burden on you and staff to meet that in addition to all of the other work, and we just don't know how that will go in the future.
No, that is absolutely correct, but I didn't want to mislead anybody.
Yeah, sure. No. And then secondly, what I also understand is a key component of this position is to work with you in creating, supporting, and charting a vision for how this looks in Indian River County. That you have a number of things on your plate, as you should, as superintendent. And we have key positions in innovation and creation and secondary, in all of the educational positions. We don't have one in this that supports you in this aspect of your work. And as I understand it, this is a position comparable to others to support you in forwarding this work in the district.
That's correct.
Ms. Rosario?
Much of the discussion that I have had with community members and with Dr. Moore has pretty much been on the same level as many of the board members sharing here now. I have had constituents contact me who have shared pro the two positions, as equal or more against. And I understand the concern on both sides. Many have talked about just the title alone, and I know that that is not a hill that you are worth dying on. You mentioned earlier that, if it's the title that might be throwing people off, that might be the compromise here, Mr. Barefoot. And I think that when we look at where we want to go as a district and what we want to accomplish, I think impact is really a word that has stood out to me. What is going to be the impact of the work that we are doing? What is the impact of the equity committee? What will be the impact of leadership? What will be the impact at the ground level in our classrooms with our teachers and with our principals and assistant principals and so on and so forth? And every decision that we make as board members and as district employees, it really has to center and circle around the strategic plan. It is something that I say very often, and it is something that I think we don't do often, and we ought to. So putting those two together, I was thinking about the rebranding or the renaming. The work still gets done, and on a more global base, on a more universal level, what other things could this position benefit you as being a cabinet position? And I'm specifically talking about the Chief Equity and Diversity Officer. So I thought I would share some titles with you. One I thought might be, as you mentioned, again, good compromise. Strategic Impact Officer is one that is not used in other places. I've been doing some of my research. For the most part, everyone is using the same titles. And I think that's really where the scare is. It's that it is a politically pushed title that is now being used by so many in creating these new positions to push this politically based agenda. I am not insinuating that we are doing that. I know that you and I have had conversations about this, and that certainly has not been your intent. But I do realize and I do recognize the support that you need, because you have been pretty much a full-time director of equity here. So I thought that might be something to consider. I'd like to hear your feedback on that. I have other titles, Transformational Officer, Transformational Impact Officer, Organizational Impact Officer. These are all cabinet level titles that I think might work well with the responsibilities that you have created in this. The other part of this position, I would like to ask if it's not something that you are needing right away, since you mentioned that you were initially going to bring it up in in the summer, bring it forth in the summer. If your work has kind of let up a little bit and you have gotten a lot accomplished in the last few weeks or months, last couple of months, last month, 2 weeks, whatever it is, and you have shared that has been a great relief for you because you've been able to get into the schools and really do the work of superintendent. Maybe taking a step back and maybe putting this on hold for a little bit to allow the new equity committee to begin its work, and that will relieve you, give you a little bit of some reprieve, and maybe come back with a better look at this position, how you want to better word it with the feedback from the equity committee that we have yet to receive. It might actually benefit you in recreating the position that you really need to help you through? Is it one that you want to only use for equity, or is it one that you really want to use to address the strategic plan, to address the strategic goals and the impact that, that we as a district really want to see? And I think that's really where you want to be. I think based on our communication, it's really all about the impact and the academic achievement, and really getting into the nitty-gritty of seeing us close the gap and making those improvements there. So what are your thoughts?
I like the first name. So I like to get everyone's thoughts, but the truth of the reality is I think we're in a very good place right now. And just last Friday, I had all of district staff, and we are forward thinking, or forward planning is probably a better way of saying it. And from a systems perspective, if we're not doing the work that's going to be done in 6 to 12 months out, then we're behind. So in terms of where we're moving right now, we're in a good place. My fear is if we wait too long, then as this new equity committee comes on and, you know, the beginning to request and go through the established court order requirements of the equity committee, I don't want to lose any traction with that particular team. So creating that designation or that relationship is a priority. Creating or eliminating some of the barriers and obstacles that would be in the way of them. But in terms of marketing and branding and ultimately informing the community what this role is and what the responsibilities are, I think that really is the immediate next step. And I think each of you as board members understand the volume of work and the priority. But a job description shouldn't set off a community the way that it in some cases has. And it is informing, it is creating the dialogue or conversation around this is a body of work that is a priority. But me as a superintendent in this cabinet understands this community and is in service to this community. Mm-hmm. And I get it. I'm the new guy from a very liberal place, but I'm not there for a reason. So it is creating trust, and it is building relationships, and in some cases people hear things that are very scary and nervous. But that doesn't need to be an opportunity not to engage in the conversation and the dialogue, to create environments for our kids to be successful in this global economy, in this multicultural world in which they live in. You know, you look at, our student population is 51% white. Our 85% of our teachers are white. In 20 years, what do you think show me, look at your students, and that's what the city's going to look like in 20, 25 years. So, there's work for us to do. Taking the time to inform and look at it. I couldn't agree more, and I'm kind of jealous that I didn't think about it. The impact, I think that is a great idea in looking at the impact of all things, while at the same time, not misforming anyone about the intentionality of the impact we're looking around diversity and equity.
Don't be jealous, we're on the same team.
I know. It was good.
We're on the same team. My last comment, and thank you for that, okay, I'll reserve what I was just going to say. My last comment was about the equity trainer, because there are two positions that are really leading this conversation. One was the cabinet position, and then the other one was the equity trainer position. And in the same way that, I reviewed the responsibilities of the equity trainer, really the primary role is of that of professional development and training the teachers in our district in all areas of the strategic plan, including the areas of equity. Am I correct on that?
Well, you know, the theory of action behind that particular position, which is a unique position, if it's not done correctly, it's going to cause problems and concerns very similar to this. But identifying a individual or individuals who have that very specific skill set, who have a deep understanding of the work and how it's supposed to be done at multiple points within the organization ensures the acceleration of the goals that we've set for ourselves. So it really is being very, very specific. But once again, you know, that was creating a position in order to move us to a reorganized or recreated district based on the current reality. And I think when all the pieces fall into place, any individual can step back and say, okay, this makes sense in terms of the volumes or units of work each office or individual is being asked to do.
So if the title is going to be changed on one, would the title be changed on the other? And that might not be a question that you would need to answer now, but if we go to, you know, impact officer on one, then could the other one be transformational impact trainer? You know, or something where, because one person is reporting to the cabinet member, how can we better title that one so that it's not so isolated in one particular area, but addresses the needs of all of the district?
You know, words matter. When you hear the word equity, I can only imagine how many different definitions go through people's minds when they hear that. We've come through the last 6 months of a very politicized environment, and I don't know that it's changed much lately. So we're liable to be faced with strong points of view on both sides of it. But at the end of the day, call it what you like, it's the work that the person's responsible for that matters. And so if you can come up with a better name, that's great, but the more important thing is what's the job description, what's the work? And in particular, what's the initial work? Because the initial focus, as you and I have discussed, is really on managing all the moving parts of that will have to be that are being addressed and will continue to need to be addressed to get unitary status. But for me, the academic piece is far and away the most important, because that has implications for years to everybody, to every kid. And so, I mean, this is something that we're not going to decide this here. We could probably take a vote. But I think we just got to, I don't even know how to say this, but we just need to try and, I know a lot of the people that have commented on this, and they're all, you know, great Americans, whatever words you want to use, but people have different views. And when they see a word, they jump to a conclusion based on their own experiences or their own biases or their own whatever it is. And it isn't necessarily always accurate. I don't know. We could talk about this, I suppose, for a long time, not that others don't have a point of view, but we'll figure it out. I'm sure we have no choice. You know, the work's got to get done. There's a benefit to having a lot of these activities roll up to a person that's responsible for seeing that they get done. Otherwise, you get diffused and everybody's got a little piece of the whole pie, but it's better to have someone focused on the whole pie. We can find the right person with the right priorities associated with the job.
Yeah, having been a school board member for a couple of years now, there are certain topics that get politicized. And it's been interesting to watch. You know, I've been in the middle of a debate about whether a superintendent should be fired or to stay. I've been in the middle of a debate about face masks. I've been now and so have you guys, in the middle of a debate now about a term, equity officer. And it's interesting, all the emails we've gotten, I fielded lots of calls. And I think, you know, my background helped me this week because, you know, being able to let people vent and then giving them some information that I don't think they were privy to, because they're reading only what they see. And I think also in the world right now, the word equity is a sensitive term. And the word to me means something different than it means to other people. And when I explained what it meant to me to some of these people that were very strongly opinionated against it, they understood. And I think that's why we need to communicate this better. I think throwing it out there and all of a sudden we have two groups really massively feeling, either for or against, it's rough. I didn't know, and I'm going to say it, I didn't know I was going to be in the middle of a race war this week. And I'm going to tell you, I felt like I was. And it was sad. It was sad. It's not what this is about. I had people that were concerned about bringing politics into schools. That's what they're doing right now. That's politics in the schools when they're saying things like they're saying to me this week. Taking away from some kids to give to others. I assure you that's not what we're going to do. Equity does not do that. What I mean when I think of equity is you have kids that come to school, and I'm going to talk about 5-year-olds. They come to school with parents that have prepared them to learn and to read and to sit still in class. And then you have other 5-year-olds that haven't had that opportunity. Equity to me is we have to help that 5-year-old that didn't get that opportunity learn those skills that they need to be successful in life. And so sometimes that costs more money to do that because you have to hire more people or you have to get more programs or you have to get more curriculum to be able to teach kids things that they didn't get that opportunity somewhere else to learn. And that's what equity to me is giving kids what they need to survive and to learn. And not every child is the same. Child can be totally prepared for school and not be prepared socially or emotionally. So to me, it's about all children. And when you're sitting there telling me it's about certain races, I get offended by that. Because it's not. This is not a race war. This is a position that's going to help us for children. And I think that people are, when they listen to that, they understand it better. And I think it's a communication problem that we have right now, is how to communicate this. And when you read all those lines on that position, there were a couple that popped out at me too. I told you about the one about curriculum. That concerned me. So, the other position about the equity coordinator, we have someone right now that's an equity coordinator and she's doing PD training, right? And we talked a little bit about that, the need for that position or not. So I called FSBA and I asked, what are other districts doing? We're behind the 8 ball on it.
Yeah, we are.
We are. We haven't been doing what other districts are doing. I met with a friend in St. Lucie last night and who's at the district office in a high-level position. And I asked, do you have this position? No, we don't have to. I said, why not? I know, Pam, you're looking at me like, no, they don't have it. Because they have 33% across the board of African American, Hispanic, and white. So it's a different culture. It's a different, unique situation. They have so much diversity in that district office that they don't have this position because many people are taking that responsibility on. We don't have that. And so that's why this is unique to us. It's different for us. I think looking at this, we have to communicate this better. There are people that are jumping on this because they don't understand what we're trying to do. I think they're very upset about it because of what they read and what they see on TV. Mm-hmm. And it's, unfortunately, we're in that world right now. Exactly. And there's no intention that this person is going to tell us what we can and can't do. That has been done in other positions across the state. So it is a fear of some people that we're going to be told that we can't do this or do that. We have to ban books or we have to do this other stuff. I'm concerned about those things. And like I said, if this person reports to you, that's who they report to.
Absolutely.
Dr. Jones, I didn't know whether you were stretching or putting your hand up.
I was going like this. I attended the Equality Zoom conference last Thursday and Friday, and it was so well done. And as Ms. Berenborg said, we're behind. I mean, equality was about all students, all races, all cultures, all religions, that we are equal. I think all of us know when we look at strategic plan, the 5 or 6 components, the most important one is academic achievement. And we've got some work to do. You saw where we are ranked in the state in certain things, and basically African-American students are about 30% behind math and English 3rd through 10th grade. So that's a given. We've got some work to do. I experienced that in my campaign in 2020, just the whole big differences, people coming at you left and right, and it was very, very challenging. And the only thing that kept me going was because I think I could do a good job because of my love of this district and this community and knowing K-12 education pretty well. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, in talking with the NAACP, I don't know, it was the October 30, 2019 meeting, or where Dr. Moxley had suggested, or they had suggested an equity department. Is that correct, Dr. Moore?
That was one of the recommendations.
One of the recommendations. So that was recommended probably right when you came in the beginning of 2020. So now in 2021, you didn't hurry through it. It's just that we are posting those positions at this time. And looking at and listening to people from other counties across the state. And there were 51 out of 57 counties represented in that conference. Small school, down to Miami, Broward, and so forth. They had some really, really good presentations. And the best ones were from students and how they felt. And if they were embraced. And I want every student who walks into any of our schools to feel safe and embraced, and that we do our absolute best to help them. So we may need some different definitions or whatever it takes, but this is a position that will help our students.
Absolutely, and a lot to consider, and it's just encouraging to hear the clearly defined priority of this board as a whole. Being thought partners in this work is an advantage that I have, and having this set as an expectation to me is just very, 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 very positive. So what I will do is circle back with staff, look at the structure, the organization. I couldn't agree more, Ms. Berenborg. It is about communication. And in terms of what hurts my heart is, those who know me know the intent of the design of the position and what we want to achieve collectively. But it is taking the additional time to fully inform. And then put our ears back and get to work to make it happen.
Dr. Moore, thank you for doing that. Thank you for circling back. I'd just like to add a final thought to when you do that. Take a look at the description of the cabinet level position and just reread it and make sure that it is not written in a politically divisive manner. That's the key right there, is not to use terms that are politically motivated we keep talking about this in this climate. And when we do that, we will actually address some of the concerns of taxpayers who are concerned about this. We received a great amount of support from the taxpayers last August. And we want to be able to be accountable to the taxpayers for their support. And when they look at positions that are funded through taxpayer dollars, it's our responsibility to address those concerns appropriately. So I think that we are doing that. And I want to thank you for your support, because what I hear is that you have the support of the board. Now we need the support of the community. And we need to work hard at making sure that the community understands that we are listening to them and that we are going to address this appropriately. Last thing that I'm going to ask Dr. Moore is that even though I know that we will in some ways be double dipping, some of the concern with the community and why many of them don't understand the history that you have provided for us before these positions were approved was that they don't listen to the superintendent's workshop, many of them. Many of them tune into the business meeting only, and so they miss a lot of the background information. So tonight during our business meeting, I know that we don't necessarily need to go into a full discussion of it, but it would benefit the community if we could add to the agenda a discussion about this, you know, an input or what the outcome of our meeting right now is with regard to these positions, so that those who tune in the evening will understand where we stand. Great, thank you.
As far as tonight's concerned, we start at 5:01. 6 o'clock, we start the joint meeting. I don't know, citizen input, Ms. Esplin, there are 3, and whoever shows up. I know that a couple of the ones that came via email are from some of the folks that typically come in person. But just be mindful, it's one thing, I mean, if I could make a suggestion, if we want to address this tonight, frankly, other than acknowledging there was a discussion and there will be further thought given to it, I'm not sure how productive it would be to get into a long discussion. I'd rather spend our time interacting with Mr. Brown and members of the NAACP Executive Committee, and I'm sure most of the members of, if not all of the Equity Committee will be listening, because we've got to agree on a path forward here, at least over the near term. And there's been some communication over the last few days about that with no conclusions reached that I'm aware of. So we'll see what happens. But I would just caution my colleagues to maybe, Dr. Moore, if you want to just address it briefly, that, you know, there was a good discussion, and continue to, whatever words, in your words, I don't want to tell you what to say, probably should suffice at the moment. It will come back, I'm sure, in the future. I think a lot of this, though, you know, can be incorporated into the thinking about the discussion tonight about the relationship between the NAACP and the school board and the role of the Equity Committee in facilitating and moving everything forward. And a discussion like that can help inform people, if they're paying attention, as to how this role, whatever you want to call it, might fit into the dialogue and what we're trying to accomplish here in the 5 or 6 key components that are required to reach unitary status. So anything else, anybody, before we adjourn for the afternoon? Hearing none, the meeting's adjourned at 3:12.